Okay, let me ask you this. Have you ever sat down for D&D Heist? You've got these elaborate plans, but then it just feels a little, well, predictable.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like your brilliant moves, or maybe even your spectacular blunders, they don't quite seem to reshape the world around them in, real time.
Yeah, like the story's just going to happen anyway, no matter what you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you ever wish the narrative truly pulsed and shifted with every wild gambit your players make? That it really listened?
That's a feeling so many dungeon masters and players resonate with, isn't it? That deep desire for a game world that genuinely responds, where every choice, every whispered word, every single dice roll has visible, tangible consequences that ripple out, way beyond just the immediate moment.
Yeah.
It's really the difference between playing in a story and truly co-authoring one with the players.
You've totally hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today on the Deep Dive.
Sounds good.
We take your sources, we extract those potent nuggets of knowledge, basically giving you a shortcut to being truly well-informed on a topic.
And today's topic is a juicy one.
It really is. Today, we're embarking on this fascinating deep dive into how dungeon masters can craft dynamic, responsive heist adventures, where every single player action reverberates outwards, creating logical, visible consequences throughout the whole game world.
And our insights for this deep dive, they come from a really fantastic article by Anna Lubansky over on LitRPG Reads.
Oh yeah, LitRPG Reads, great site. They often blend traditional stories with those game-like elements, right?
Exactly. And Anna's piece is titled 10 Essential Dungeon Master Tips for Crafting Reactive Heist Scenarios. And honestly, it's an invaluable resource for DMs looking to move beyond those, rigid plot lines.
Right, getting away from the railroad.
Yeah, into a world that really pulses in tandem with their players' wildest gambits. It's good stuff.
Okay, so our mission today is to unpack the secrets behind creating these living, evolving narratives. We'll explore practical tips for designing adaptive environments that actually feel alive.
And managing those organically reactive NPCs and organizations, the ones who actually remember what the players did last session.
Yes, and striking that crucial balance, that tightrope walk, between story control and genuine player freedom.
Always tricky, that one.
It is. We'll share some, easygoing anecdotes, walk you through some helpful tracking tools maybe, and give you advice on avoiding common pitfalls. All inspired by the wisdom in this source material. Okay, let's unpack this. How do we make our D&D heists truly breathe?
Where do we start?
So to kick us off, the core idea here is really understanding what a reactive heist truly means, right? And how it fundamentally differs from what maybe many of us are used to at the table. What's that big shift the article talks about?
Well, the article really hammers home this shift away from what it calls railroad tracks and rigid blueprints,
We have an A to B to C plot.
Exactly. Think of it less like following some pre-drawn, unchangeable line on a map and more like managing a reactive campaign that seethes and shifts under the weight of every rogue step and silenced guard. That's a quote I really liked.
Ooh, I like that. Seethes and shifts.
Yeah, it's about building a world that genuinely breathes and responds to the player's presence and actions rather than just, sitting there waiting for them to catch up to the next pre-planned plot point.
That makes so much sense because when I think about those linear stories, I often picture players just bumping into those frustrating invisible walls, right? It feels like their plans are constantly being hemmed by a DM's predetermined script. But the article contrasts that so well with reactive ones, where every action casts ripples.
Right. It's not just about what happens in the current room anymore.
No. It's about how that single action, maybe it's a small thing, ebbs and crashes through security networks, NPC alliances, and city gossip. It's like crafting this intricate domino effect where even the smallest nudge has a visible thematic echo throughout your entire setting.
And that's precisely where the electrifying magic really happens for the players. That's the electrifying anticipation and possibility that the source material talks about.
Yeah, that feeling of what if.
Exactly. The story doesn't just lurch along to a script. It pulses in tandem with your players' wildest gambits. Yeah. It transforms the whole experience into this constantly shifting puzzle box that players build with the DM, not just one they're solving for the DM.
That's a great way to put it.
And as a player, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing your clever plan or even your hilariously misguided one.
Oh, especially those.
Yeah. Seeing it genuinely alter the landscape of the game. I remember I once had a player try to distract a guard by setting off fireworks on a nearby rooftop.
Okay, bold move.
Right. Instead of just creating noise, it actually drew the attention of this secret sky militia the city had, who thought it was some kind of signal. Yeah. And it escalated a simple infiltration into this frantic citywide aerial chase. And the key thing was that felt earned. It wasn't random. It was a direct result of their weird creative choice.
That's a fantastic example.
Yeah.
Because it really boils down to the power of player agency and, importantly, visible consequences. It's not just that actions matter, it's that players see them mattering and they feel the direct impact.
Exactly. The thrill erupts when players realize the city's pulse synchronizes with their own. That's another great line. And what's fascinating here is that the article emphasizes that shadows lengthen and doors close, not because you decree it, but because they made a call, sparked a rumor, or left a subtle trace behind.
Right, it's cause and effect.
It's the ultimate find out moment for players, you know?
What?
Every decision is like dropping a coin into this narrative machine that truly changes the gears inside. When players realize their choices are the actual drivers of the story, not just responses to it, their engagement just skyrockets.
That's the difference between the DM saying, change my world if you dare, versus watch me tell a story, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's such a powerful shift because it amplifies immersion to an incredible degree. Knowing that even a single footstep could tilt the outcome, that truly transforms every skill check, every whispered word, every moment of hesitation into a genuine, high-stakes decision.
Yeah, the dice rolls suddenly feel heavier.
They really do. It elevates the stakes far beyond just success or failure on a die roll. It asks, okay, you did that. Now what are you going to do when the world inevitably pushes back?
Indeed. It's about players being fully invested because their investment directly shapes the narrative unfolding around them. Which brings us to how the Dungeon Master's role itself changes in this type of game.
Right. It's not the same job anymore.
No, the DM's role morphs from puppeteer to conductor, as the source puts it beautifully. You're synchronizing player decisions into this electrifying narrative symphony. It's less about dictating every single note and more about guiding the orchestra's overall flow and tempo.
Which means improvisation becomes way more important. It's a lifeline for the DM.
Totally.
You don't just need a good script. You need prepped flexibility to chase those cunning thieves when they go off plan, or to suddenly negotiate with suspicious merchants you hadn't even thought about.
And this isn't about just winging it blindly, right? It's about being prepared for anything and having the mental tools ready to react intelligently, like having a well-stocked toolbox, even if you don't know exactly which tool you'll need for the job today.
That's a great analogy.
And the satisfaction for players is just immense because there's seeing the immediate and rippling aftermath of their choices. They know the world bends but never breaks around their schemes.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly rewarding feeling as a player to see your choices genuinely reflected back at you in the game world, to know that your actions have permanence. And for the DM, the reward is seeing the genuine surprise and, frankly, the engagement on their players' faces as the story veers into unforeseen yet perfectly logical territory.
Absolutely. This approach really rewards player creativity, making even routine encounters burn with uncertainty. The world stops being just a backdrop.
Right, it becomes an intricate playground.
Yes. Or even a character in its own right, pushing back, reacting, adapting to the players. It's a dynamic, collaborative story in the truest sense. It sounds like, yeah, maybe a bit more work up front, but the payoff for that immersive experience must be huge.
Definitely worth it, I think.
So if we're moving beyond these linear stories and really leaning into deep reactivity, how do we actually build this responsive world? Like from the ground up, what's the fundamental foundation we need to lay down first?
Well, the article suggests starting with touch points, not corridors, which I think is a really neat way to put it.
Okay, explain that. Touch points, not corridors.
Instead of predetermining these fixed paths for your players, like, the classic dungeon crawl hallway with a monster predictably at the end, you pinpoint where players can tangle with the world. These are your crucial moments of interaction, your nodes of engagement where player action is most likely to cause a ripple effect.
And it gives some great examples of these interaction nodes. Things like security checkpoints, guard shift changes, maybe that one drunken guard who talks too much.
Jealous lovers, backroom handoffs, citywide communication relays.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea is that each of these isn't just a static obstacle, right? It's a layered mechanism with visible states, hidden triggers, and plausible outcomes. Can you maybe elaborate on what a layered mechanism actually means for a DM in practice?
Certainly. Let's take that security checkpoint example. Its visible state might be, okay, it's currently staffed by two pretty bored-looking guards, pretty standard.
Right.
But its hidden triggers could be anything. Maybe there's a secret alarm button under the counter. Maybe a patrolling captain is due to arrive in exactly 5 minutes. Or maybe one of the guards has a personal, deep-seated fear of a specific crime boss the players accidentally name-drop.
Oh, interesting.
And then the plausible outcomes could range wildly. A simple bribe might get the players through smoothly. A loud diversion could draw more guards. Or perhaps a subtle magical charm causes the guards to completely forget they ever saw them. The key point is, it's not just a barrier to be bypassed. It's a living, breathing part of the system with multiple points of interaction and the potential for many different reactions based on player input.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. These are the little spots where the sparks of reactivity can really begin. And then, building on that, you need to design logical triggers and reactions.
Yeah.
Triggers, as the source states, aren't traps for the unwary, which I think is important. They're invitations to ripple, designed as logical cause and effect hinges.
Precisely. I love that phrase too, invitations to ripple. It really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does.
So it's about simple actions like a foot slips, a gem vanishes, an alias slips under the wrong nose, something shifts. These are the small, everyday occurrences, maybe even mistakes, that can ignite a much larger chain reaction. And the crucial DM preparation points here are defining what triggers the reaction, what force unleashes, and how those forces manifest in ways players can sense. The key, and the article stresses this, is to avoid randomness, just for randomness' sake.
Right. It has to feel earned.
Exactly. The reactions need to feel natural and logical. Otherwise, players just feel like the DM is throwing arbitrary obstacles at them, and that kills the immersion.
Because if the alarm does sound, city guards don't just magically teleport to the location, do they?
Hopefully not.
The article emphasizes clarity and logic. They scramble, reroute, leak anxiety into civilian patterns, and perhaps even call on old debts. It's a chain of believable events that follows a natural progression, which makes a world feel grounded and real, even when it's reacting dramatically. For instance, if a player's really loud combat draws attention, it's not just a new monster appearing out of thin air. Maybe it's the guard captain who happens to have a standing poker game with the city watch commander, calling in a favor and getting extra patrols flooding the streets nearby, a consequence that feels organic to the world you've built.
Exactly. Every reaction should then radiate consequences through these believable networks. Think about it. A door that's unlocked becomes watched. A trustworthy fence grows wary. A familiar face refuses aid. These are ripple effects that make sense within the established world of criminal contacts, official channels, and, just general city gossip.
Yeah.
You want to envision how actions flow through these interconnected webs.
And it encourages dungeon masters to think about maybe 2 or 3 forked responses for every key point of contact, some lenient, some severe.
Right, planning for different levels of success or failure.
Yeah. That way, you're prepared for different player approaches, and you're not caught totally flat-footed when they do something unexpected. It sounds like a great way to prep without actually over-prepping every single possibility.
Absolutely. And each outcome then reverberates elsewhere. A missed window of opportunity might lead to a new informant's tip being given to a rival crew instead. Or maybe an overly aggressive, messy heist spooks rival crews into taking preemptive action, changing the entire criminal landscape for the next few sessions.
Wow.
It's about building this dynamic system where actions don't just exist in a vacuum. And what anchors all of this, what makes it work, is consistency and logic. That's what allows players to sense the order beneath the mayhem, even as the world around them is constantly shifting and reacting. They learn to trust the game's internal logic, which just deepens their investment even further.
The source material provides some fantastic specific examples of these narrative triggers and reactions in action. Let's maybe dig into a few just to see what this looks like practically at the table. For instance, if players disable a security alarm, the immediate reaction isn't just cool the alarms off. Instead, the article suggests it causes backup guards to patrol new routes with raised suspicion. What's the DM's thought process behind that kind of reaction?
Well, this is where we move beyond simple, binary on-off mechanics, right? If an alarm is disabled, a smart security force isn't just going to shrug and ignore it. They'd know something's wrong, even if it's silent now.
Right, someone noticed it went offline.
Exactly. So the DM considers, how would they realistically react? They'd probably reroute patrols to cover that area more closely. Maybe they send a specialized unit, like a mage or someone with detection skills, and every guard in the vicinity would suddenly be on higher alert. This isn't just a simple counter, it's about the guards exhibiting intelligent, dynamic behavior based on the new information they have. You're essentially asking, how would a real-world security force react to an unexpected breach or system failure? That thought process is key to building believability. It's about escalation and adaptation, not just static obstacles waiting to be overcome.
Or, here's another one. If you're lock-picking a noble's safe and you don't cover your tracks, maybe you leave behind a bent lockpick, a faint footprint, something traceable, that single mistake could spawn a citywide investigation, prompting merchants across the city to tighten their security policies.
Yeah.
This is huge. It's not just about that one safe anymore. The entire economic landscape for future heists just shifted because of one clumsy moment.
Exactly. This particular example perfectly illustrates how a seemingly minor oversight can have these widespread systemic consequences. A powerful noble isn't just going to replace their stolen gold, they'll demand answers, put pressure on the authorities. That pressure then radiates outwards to the city wash, who might then lean on local merchants to increase their own security measures as a preventative step. It creates this domino effect across the entire city's commerce. Suddenly, every shop, every bank, every wealthy house becomes just that little bit harder to hit. Players feel the weight of their carelessness in a very tangible way, potentially across multiple future sessions. It's brilliant.
And what if your party, maybe things go sideways and they spill blood in a designated no violence zone, like a neutral tavern or something? The article suggests that could drive local gangs into open war, which means players are then forced to cross newly dangerous territory that's now filled with escalating street skirmishes and rapidly shifting allegiances. Their choice directly creates new environmental obstacles and fundamentally shapes the urban landscape they have to navigate later.
This is a prime example of player actions having serious moral and political ramifications within the game world. If a gang turf, especially a neutral zone, is violated with violence, it's often seen as an act of war or a major breach of underworld etiquette.
Right, it breaks the rules.
It breaks the rules. The DM's role then is to portray the consequences of that broken rule. Maybe street blockades pop up, maybe gang patrols increase dramatically, maybe desperate civilians caught in the crossfire start seeking the player's help, or maybe other factions try to capitalize on the chaos. It transforms what might have been a simple combat encounter into a complex, city-altering event. It makes the players truly feel the weight and repercussions of their violent actions.
The bottom line here, it seems, is that consistency and logic anchor every shifting facet of this reactive world. Each ripple starts somewhere specific, leaps through believable channels, guard networks, gossip, faction responses, and lands with a noticeable impact. Players learn to sense the order beneath the seeming mayhem, which rewards deep planning and heightens immersion with every single move they make. This isn't about random chaos. It's about a dynamic, logical response system humming beneath the surface.
Well put.
So, with a responsive world in place, how do we design the actual challenges and encounters within it to also be dynamic? It sounds like they need to adapt just as much as the wider world does.
Exactly. The article states that encounters must breathe alongside your players. That same security checkpoint we talked about, for example, might offer a completely different kind of thrill depending on whether the players approaching it are slick-tongued charmers trying to talk their way through, nimble shadows trying to sneak past unseen, or, firebrand bruisers ready to cause a distraction.
So you're not just designing a static obstacle, you're designing a responsive situation.
That's the core idea.
So it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all obstacle. You need to think of these modules like puzzles with interchangeable pieces, not brittle blueprints. That flexibility seems absolutely key. So how does a DM practically apply this? Let's say my players are approaching a vault guarded by, guards. Pretty standard stuff. How do I make that encounter adaptable on the fly?
Well, the source gives some great examples of this kind of adaptation in action. If the party decides to use a noisy distraction down the hall, you might add an extra shift change of guards who come running to investigate the commotion. If they decide to just go loud and fight their way through, you could reinforce with heavily armed sentinels who are alerted by the sounds of battle.
Makes sense.
And if they try to bribe a guard, maybe you let the ripple pass quietly for now, but spike prices for future bribery, ensuring that choice has a future cost. Maybe word gets around that these guys pay well. Each player approach directly alters the encounter itself, rather than them just finding the single correct solution you might have planned for.
Which means, as a DM, you should probably outline key scenarios, leaving their internal logic loose enough to bend without snapping. It's about having parameters, but not a rigid script.
Exactly.
For that vault guard, for instance, you're not just prepping their combat stats in AC.
Yeah, right. You're thinking about maybe the guard's threshold for bribery, their alertness to magic, or maybe even family ties that players could potentially leverage. These are all potential levers for the players to discover and pull, allowing the encounter to adapt to their specific methods, not just the one combat-focused solution you might have initially pre-planned. Maybe this guard has a sick child at home, and a player, after doing some legwork or maybe just getting lucky with an insight check, offers a rare magical cure in exchange for looking the other way. That's a unique, memorable solution that emerged entirely from the encounter's flexible design.
And what if the party splits up? The article advises designing challenge fragments that might trigger complications for each group. This is so smart because often splitting the party can feel like a real headache for the DM.
Oh, it can be. Yeah.
But here it becomes an opportunity for more dynamic play. I remember a game where my group split to tackle 2 different objectives simultaneously, and the DM had prepped these little mini challenges for each group. I think one was a tricky puzzle, the other was a delicate social dilemma, and the success or failure of one group directly impacted the other group's situation in real time. It added this incredible layer of tension and interdependence.
That's precisely the idea. The article highlights the concept of using an encounter adaptation table as a key tool. It's essentially about labeling encounters by type, noting the default setup, brainstorming a few likely player-driven alterations, and jotting down potential DM responses or adjustments for each.
Okay, like a cheat sheet.
Exactly. This keeps your improvisation sharp and plausible because you've already pre-considered how different choices might impact the scenario logically. Let's look at one example from that idea. A basic stealth encounter.
Perfect. So initially the setup might be a standard guard route, regular patrols, pretty simple.
Right, but if the players use magical silence to move undetected, the DM's reactive adjustment could be that the guards bunch into one group, change route.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, they're not just magically silenced and bypassed. The guards react intelligently to the new, unnerving circumstances, the lack of normal ambient sound, maybe. They become more vigilant, harder to bypass as a group now. It's a clever counterplay that still allows the player's magic to be effective, but introduces a new, logical challenge that arises directly from their actions.
Exactly. Or for a social encounter, imagine the initial scenario is a merchant reviews credentials at entry. Standard procedure. But if a player bluffs noble status, the DM's reactive adjustment isn't just a simple pass-fail check. Instead, the merchant consults a hidden directory, stalls.
Ooh, I like that. Creates tension.
Right. It creates this wonderfully nuanced reaction. The merchant isn't immediately fooled, but they also aren't immediately hostile or calling the guards. They're buying time, perhaps sending a runner, which creates this escalating tension for the players. They know their bluff might soon be called, maybe very publicly. It makes the social interaction feel like a ticking clock, not just a single dice roll.
I love that. Even small environmental details can adapt. Like maybe there's a window left slightly open on an upper floor that the thief plans to use for entry. Classic. But if the thief leaves evidence inside, during that first entry, say, they drop a unique lockpick or leave a distinctive muddy boot print, then the next time the party comes back, maybe that window is now barred and alarmed.
The world learns.
The world learns. It shows the environment reacting and adapting over time, making players feel like their actions, even small mistakes, have permanent imprints. It's not just a momentary challenge they overcame. It's a living, breathing security system that remembers and improves.
The beauty of this whole approach is how it empowers player creativity, isn't it? Mobility in design empowers your players. When they see their tactics genuinely change the board, every victory and failure lands with real weight.
Absolutely. It's no longer just about beating the DM or finding the right answer, but about genuinely interacting with a living world that pushes back, adapts, and sometimes even surprises them.
The article concludes this section by saying that the tension between improvisation and design becomes a crucible, forging unforgettable nights at the table.
That's a great line.
It really is. It's a dance between the DM's careful preparation and the player's unpredictable ingenuity.
And that dance is where the magic happens.
That's such a great way to put it. It sounds like the world itself becomes part of the challenge, which is just way more interesting and engaging than facing purely static obstacles. It's dynamic, it's alive, and it reacts.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so we've got a responsive world and dynamic challenges, but a world isn't just about locations and locked doors. It's about the people and the powers operating within it. How do NPCs and organizations become truly reactive in a heist scenario? They can't just be cardboard cutouts.
No, definitely not. This is where a living world truly spins on the faces and motives behind each heavy door. NPCs and factions are not just static quest givers or obstacles. They sculpt the heist's rhythm. They are active participants in the drama. Their desires often complicated by intricate relationships, hidden secrets, and a good dose of pride or paranoia.
Right. You're not just bypassing a guard. You're dealing with a person who has hopes, fears, maybe gambling debts, a family, a life outside of just being an obstacle in the player's path.
Exactly. So individualizing these characters transforms challenges into nuanced, volatile puzzles. Suddenly, that trusted ally might become a potential turncoat if the pressure gets too high or the price is right. Or maybe a casual acquaintance becomes an unexpected lifeline because the players inadvertently helped them earlier. It makes every single interaction potentially meaningful because the social stakes become just as high, if not higher, than the physical ones.
So as a DM, you really need to equip major NPCs with vivid secrets and clear ambitions. Ask yourself, what do they truly want? What lines will they absolutely refuse to cross? And maybe more importantly, for whom or what will they cross those lines? How do they react to betrayal or bribery or seeing success slip through their fingers?
Those are the core questions, yeah. They define their reactivity and make them feel like real, complex people operating within the world. For instance, I once had a fence in a game who initially seemed purely mercenary, all about the gold. But my players double-crossed him on a relatively minor deal. Instead of just cutting them off or demanding more money next time, he secretly planted evidence from their last job that led the City Watch straight to their next planned safe house.
Ouch. That's cold.
It was. Because his primary ambition wasn't just accumulating gold, it was maintaining his reputation as a reliable, untouchable figure in the underworld. Their betrayal was a direct affront to that reputation, so his reaction was personal and aimed at undermining them.
That's a fantastic example of a personal grudge rippling out with significant consequences. And their personalities and moods shouldn't be static either, right? They need to flex as the heist evolves.
Absolutely. A fence who feels scorned might actively sell your secrets to the highest bidder. Or maybe a rival thief who's genuinely impressed by your crew's daring and skill might seek an unexpected partnership when you least expect it, perhaps when you're both cornered. The world isn't just reactive through guards and alarms, it's reactive through these shifting relationships, perceptions, and alliances.
And then beyond just individual NPCs, organizations mix paranoia with pride. Crime syndicates might shift their allegiance based on who seems strongest or who just caused the most chaos. Temples might suddenly close their sanctuaries if holy ground was desecrated during a chase. Merchant guilds might raise bounties in response to ripples your players start.
Yeah, these larger entities don't just sit still. They have their own agendas, their own internal politics, and they react strategically to maintain their power or influence. So if a rumor races through the city streets about 3 masked thieves disrupting the high-stakes dice tables at the Golden Griffin Casino, you might see alliances fracture between different criminal factions vying for control of gambling dens. Bargains might suddenly skew as people get nervous. And it's not just criminals. Maybe the city guard hierarchy shifts, or rival noble houses see an opportunity to blame each other. Dynamic relationships drive intrigue. Every NPC, every faction is both a hinge, a lever, their reactions kaleidoscoping your planned story into a web of surprise.
And that ties directly into the flow of information and those crucial long-term repercussions. You have to let information flow naturally through the world.
Yes. If word of the heist leaks, maybe a player gets captured and interrogated, maybe someone talks too loudly in a tavern, then loyalists might suddenly lay low and become unavailable. Tempers might fray within a normally disciplined criminal gang, leading to infighting. Or maybe opportunistic competitors gamble everything for a final score, sensing a moment of weakness or chaos they can exploit.
A true living world hums with the constant churn of motives, vengeance, fear, greed, ambition. And as DMs, the article suggests we should map not just the immediate reactions, but how they reverberate days or even sessions later, haunting the players with the gravity of their choices.
That adds that deep, lingering consequence, that sense of history that makes the game feel truly epic and memorable. Your actions echo.
The source gives some great specific examples of how reactive NPCs and organizations might function. For instance, if there's a particularly messy or public botched heist, the impact isn't just on the players getting caught or escaping. Maybe the local thieves guild tightens recruitment, demanding loyalty tests. Their entire operational structure changes in direct response to player actions.
This is a brilliant example of a systemic reaction. A botched heist, particularly one that draws a lot of unwanted official attention, compromises the entire guild's operations and security. So their response isn't necessarily personal revenge against the players, though that might happen too, but a pragmatic tightening of their own security protocols and vetting processes to protect the organization.
Right.
This could directly impact future player attempts to join the guild, find new underworld contacts, or access their established networks of information or safe houses. It's a consequence that hits their resources and future opportunities, making the world feel like it has its own self-preservation instincts.
Or think about a rival crime boss. Maybe the players stole something valuable from them. Instead of sending thugs directly, they might post a massive bounty for information on the players, attracting every low-life hustler in the city.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
Now, your players don't just have to worry about the original target's forces, but a whole host of new, independent threats who are only after the bounty money. This can turn what was a targeted heist into a desperate fight for survival against a rising tide of opportunists crawling out of the woodwork.
Exactly. This creates a fascinating new dynamic. The rival boss isn't necessarily strong enough or maybe smart enough to confront the players directly, so they essentially weaponize the rest of the underworld against them. This floods the streets with desperate individuals, bounty hunters, informants, rival gangs looking to curry favor, making every shadowed alley or backroom tavern a potential danger zone. It's a clever way to scale up the threat level organically, based entirely on player success or notoriety. It forces the players to adapt to a world that has suddenly become openly hostile in new and surprising ways.
And imagine this scenario. Disillusioned guards form a vigilante task force after repeated heists, operating outside the official channels of law.
Ooh, that's dark. I like it.
The world is trying to fix the problem the players created, and the players are directly responsible for this new, potentially even more dangerous faction emerging. They aren't bound by bureaucracy or rules of engagement like the City Watch. They might be driven purely by personal vengeance or a warped sense of justice.
This is a particularly chilling example because it shows the consequences of player actions creating entirely new antagonists from scratch. These vigilante guards aren't just faceless statistics. They're individuals whose lives, careers, or sense of order have been fundamentally disrupted by the players' repeated heists. They'll likely be highly motivated, knowledgeable about guard procedures, and potentially the players' methods, and potentially utterly ruthless. This adds a layer of moral complexity and unpredictability that a standard by-the-book guard force simply wouldn't have. Immersion truly intensifies when every character and institution moves with purpose, shaped by moments players recognize and maybe even regret.
This authentic evolution is really what sustains the energy of a long campaign, isn't it? Players see their own hand at the wheel, influencing these big changes, and that trust in the unfolding story solidifies. It ties every betrayal, every secret revealed, every unexpected alliance formed right back to their original spark, their choices. It makes the world feel like a true character in its own right, constantly learning and adapting.
Absolutely. It's deeply satisfying for everyone at the table.
Okay, this all sounds amazing, genuinely. But I can also hear DMs listening thinking, wow, that sounds like it could get incredibly complex very, very quickly. How do dungeon masters manage all this reactivity without just drowning in notes and feeling completely overwhelmed?
You're absolutely right to ask that. A reactive world demands discipline and a suite of practical tools.
Yeah.
It's not just about letting things spiral wildly. The article emphasizes finding your own personal rhythms, maybe blending technology with old school note cards, whatever works for you.
Right.
It suggests starting simply. Maybe just a timeline of major events, a basic consequence map connecting key actions to key NPCs, or even just using sticky notes on a screen or map. The key is to layer complexity only when clarity remains. Don't try to track every single minor interaction or potential outcome from the get-go. Focus on the ones that truly matter and have the potential for significant ripples first.
So don't try to boil the ocean on day one. Build up your system gradually. The article talks about leveraging both digital and analog tools. For digital, it mentions things like mind mapping apps, maybe dedicated branching story trackers, or even just basic spreadsheets acting as lifelines for the over-caffeinated campaign architect.
I resemble that remark sometimes.
Me too. What are the specific advantages of, say, using a mind mapping app in this kind of reactive context? How does that help?
Digital tools like mind mapping apps are fantastic for showing connections visually. They allow you to easily link NPCs to organizations, player actions to specific consequences, and locations to known triggers using lines, colors, maybe little icons. This helps you spot hidden dangers and alluring opportunities lurking within the campaign web much faster than just sifting through pages and pages of linear text notes.
Okay, I can see that.
The very act of visually mapping these relationships often clarifies what really needs detailed prep versus what you can probably improvise on the fly based on established connections. You can see at a glance, for example, that bribing this specific guard might inadvertently alert that crime boss because they're visually linked in your map through, say, a shared informant or a past debt.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But beyond just tracking things for yourself as the DM, the article really highlights the importance of communication with the players. A world ablaze with consequence needs firm signposts. You have to actually show them the reactivity, not just know it's happening behind the screen.
Precisely. That is such a critical point. DMs should actively use session recaps, visible NPC behavior, and in-character rumors to show how the city's mood has shifted based on their actions. It's not enough to just know the world has changed. The players need to experience that change directly for it to have any impact.
Right. Give me an example.
Okay, so if an old rival NPC has surprisingly become an ally because the players dealt with a shared enemy, you can let the players know that through an encounter where the rival unexpectedly helps them instead of hindering them. Or maybe they get a cryptic warning delivered by a street urchin who claims the rival sent them. Or perhaps they overhear gossip in a tavern about how the rival has spoken favorably of them recently. These little touches build intrigue and reinforce the player's trust that their actions are genuinely shaping relationships in the world.
And vigilant record-keeping ranks among the highest arts for the reactive DM. That's a strong statement. Every meaningful choice leaves residue in the campaign.
It really does.
Whether you use index cards sorted by NPC, digital trackers like spreadsheets or wikis, or just annotated city maps, you need a system to organize player actions by type, context, and lasting consequences.
And the warning here is critical. Streamline your approach. Don't let the system become the master. Overcomplexity saps energy and risks losing sight of the cascade of consequences. You don't want your tracking system to become more work than actually running the game itself. Find something that works for you and keeps the essential information accessible.
So when it comes to specific tracking methods, timeline tools are mentioned as essential to capture the when and where, making sure you never lose track of why the city guard is suddenly chasing the party 3 sessions later because of something they did weeks ago in game time. They map that cause-effect relationship clearly over time.
Exactly. Then there are consequence maps, which can be literal drawings or digital mind maps. They help visualize which actions tangled which NPCs, which organizations, and which locations. You could use symbols like you mentioned earlier. Maybe red lines for fractured trust, little flame icons for rising heat or suspicion, or maybe green check marks for quiet opportunities they created for later payoffs, like a red string connecting a player's name to a particular NPC with a little skull symbol next to it, indicating a serious grudge has formed.
I like that visual. And then story trackers are about balancing brevity and clarity. The article gives a great simple example. Heist at Grand Casino, guard bribed, alarm silent, suspicious waiter watched. Waiter tips off rivals. Rival ambushes party in next session.
Yeah, see how concise that is. It's immediately useful information. You can quickly scan that during prep, or even pull it up mid-session if you need a reminder of the key cause and effect chain. It's like a quick bullet journal entry specifically for your campaign's reactive plot threads.
The ultimate advice here seems to be focus on precision, not excess. Focus on the decisions that fundamentally alter the world, ripple through character relationships, or open closed doors for the heist. You need to learn to cull trivial notes, foreground the choices that sing, those with teeth, memory, and deep consequences. How do you determine what sings, though? What makes a choice have teeth?
That's a great question. I think what sings are the choices that feel significant to the players, the ones that evoke a strong emotional reaction at the table, or the ones that genuinely unlock new, unexpected narrative possibilities or close off old ones. If a player makes a significant sacrifice, maybe they give up a valued item, betray a principle, or burn a bridge with an ally that sings.
Right.
If they manage to make an incredibly unlikely ally through sheer ingenuity or role-playing, that sings. These are the moments you prioritize tracking because they're the ones that will provide the richest material for future consequences, plot development, and character arcs. They have emotional weight and narrative potential.
The source also provides a handy tracking table with some specific examples. For a stealth break-in, It's tracked with maybe a timeline note, map annotation, and the possible future outcome is guard rotations altered, security raised. What kind of quick note would you actually scribble down for that to access it easily later?
Okay, for something like that, I'd probably have a simple notation on my digital city map for the location, maybe something like Grand Bank Alert Level 2, Stealth Breach detected 81 p.m., guards now 3 per shift instead of 2, patrols randomized hourly, check hashtag guard rotation table document for new patterns.
Okay, brief but informative.
And then maybe on a timeline card or note for that session, something like 81 p.m., party breached Grand Bank via stealth. Minimal direct alarm raised, but suspicious signs noted by morning shift. Anticipate altered patrol and heightened general security for approx 1 week in that district. This keeps it brief, but gives me actionable details for future sessions.
And if the players are buying off an NPC, that's tracked with maybe just note-taking on the NPC's record, and the possible future outcome is that the NPC expects future bribes, becomes potential asset liability. It's not just a one-time transaction, it has ongoing implications for that relationship. How do you prevent that NPC from becoming just an easy ATM for information every time the players need something?
That's where the expects future bribes and asset liability part comes in. It's crucial. The DM's note might be something like, NPC fence name bribed for info on vault blueprints. £500 GP. Now considers party clients but also potentially indebted. Next favor request will demand significantly higher cost, or a riskier task performed for them, or might offer info on arrival as payment.
So it's a relationship now.
Exactly. This prevents them from being a simple, static resource. Perhaps they eventually need the players to do something dangerous for them to maintain the relationship. Or their price dramatically increases each time. Or maybe the information they provide next time comes with new hidden strings attached, drawing the players deeper into their own affairs. It creates a dynamic, evolving relationship, not just a static vendor transaction.
Ultimately then, tidy tracking means choices never just vanish into the ether. Each return, each echo, each callback to a past decision deepens the mythology of your world and the legend of your players. It's about building a coherent, evolving narrative that feels like it has a long memory, shaped by the players themselves.
That's the goal, yeah.
So we've talked about building a living world, designing adapting challenges, bringing characters and organizations to life, and the tools to manage it all. But how do dungeon masters actually balance all this player freedom and world reactivity with maintaining some semblance of control over the story, guiding it towards a satisfying conclusion without just letting it fly completely off the rails? This feels like the real tightrope walk of DMing reactive campaigns.
You've hit on the art of balance perfectly. That is exactly the challenge. The article makes it very clear that a living world doesn't mean sprinting off a cliff edge. It's about maintaining a deliberate tension between freedom and narrative anchor. While every player decision should matter and create ripples, certain key story beats or milestones probably still need to arrive for the overall campaign arc to feel cohesive and purposeful.
So, loose rails replace rigid tracks. That's the idea. The general direction might be set, but the specific means, the mood, the allies, the obstacles encountered along the way, those are determined at the table through player action and reaction. The DM remains a guide, not jailer, coaxing structure from the wild rhythm of consequence.
Exactly. I remember a game where our DM had a clear main villain and a central conspiracy we were trying to unravel. But how we infiltrated their organization, who we chose to ally with or betray, and which specific clues we followed among the many available was entirely up to us. It felt like total freedom, like we were driving the investigation. But inevitably, all paths still led towards confronting the main antagonist, just in a way none of us, possibly including the DM, had initially expected.
That's a fantastic example of it working really well in practice, and a key tool for achieving this, according to the article, are plot checkpoints as landmarks. These are narrative moments that can flex in their timing or flavor, but their arrival locks in the campaign's real stakes. They provide that essential sense of progression and ensure the core story keeps moving forward, even if the path there is winding.
Think about classic heist beats. A crucial meet with a mysterious fence, a tense showdown at the vault door, a desperate rooftop chase sequence. These are moments you, as the DM, know you probably want to hit at some point to deliver the thrills of the genre. But how the players get there, when exactly they happen, and what state they're in when they arrive, that's completely up to them and their choices.
Right. The story coherence persists through these anchors regardless of how circuitous the route.
Yeah.
And the article explicitly states this is not the same as railroading. because it respects player ingenuity and agency in navigating between those points. It's like knowing your final destination is the mountain peak, but letting the players pick the path, the climbing gear, and decide whether to tackle the sheer cliff face or find the winding goat trail.
Well said. And then there are narrative funnels. This is another useful concept. These taper chaos steering characters through a web of branching paths toward common climactic events. It's about managing the potential for infinite branching complexity by gently guiding the narrative back towards key convergences, often without the players even realizing it.
How does that work in practice?
It involves things like designing flexible goals that can be achieved in multiple ways, having contingency plans ready for likely deviations, and maybe even having secret fail-safes hidden in plain sight. Perhaps an NPC who can offer a crucial clue if the players get truly stuck, but only if they seek them out.
So by offering several paths forward but guarantee certain milestones occur, DMs prevent that dreaded campaign sprawl from cannibalizing itself. You maintain narrative thrust and purpose without forcing specific actions or outcomes, which is absolutely crucial for player satisfaction and agency. It prevents the game from just drifting aimlessly into unconnected side quests.
And this delicate balance is absolutely crucial for building and maintaining player trust. Player trust builds on this equilibrium. They need to feel like they savor control while you maintain the gravity and pacing that make the story sing. When players see their choices genuinely matter, but the overall story still feels coherent, exciting, and is moving towards something meaningful, they invest fully and buy into the world completely.
Together, you unspool a drama nobody could have predicted, yet each moment feels somehow inevitable in retrospect. That's the sweet spot, isn't it?
That's the magic, yeah.
The illusion of total openness conceals your deft hand, folding chaos into coherence. It's like being a master stage magician, making the players believe they're witnessing pure, untamed magic when it's really underpinned by incredibly clever design, misdirection, and preparation.
The article lists several specific techniques for balancing control and freedom that are truly invaluable for DMs trying this. One I find particularly effective and maybe underused is fail-forward design. This means ensuring there are no dead ends, only change complications.
Oh, I love fail forward. It's so much better than just, nope, you failed, try again.
Exactly. So if a player fails a critical lock-picking check on the main vault door, it's not, you fail, the door remains stubbornly shut. What do you do now? Which can grind the game to halt.
Right, kills the momentum.
Instead, it's maybe, you fail, the lock mechanism jams loudly with a clank, alerting the guard patrol on the next floor whose footsteps you now hear approaching rapidly. The story doesn't stop, it just takes an unexpected, probably more challenging turn because of the failure. It keeps the momentum high and adds new layers of urgent challenge.
Precisely. Another technique mentioned is player-driven subplots. This means letting character arcs pull toward the main plot.
Yeah, weaving them together.
If a player's backstory involves, say, a bitter nemesis who works for the target corporation, or a lost family artifact rumored to be inside the vault they're hitting, you subtly weave that personal thread into the main heist narrative. Suddenly, retrieving the main target's MacGuffin also involves a chance for that player to confront their nemesis or reclaim their heritage, making the overall story much more personal, engaging, and meaningful for everyone at the table.
And then there are recurring rivals antagonists. These create ongoing foils linking events, providing essential continuity and a sense of a living, breathing world with persistent threats and relationships. Instead of just facing a series of one-off villains who vanish after defeat, you have a recurring character, maybe a determined city watch captain, a rival thief crew, or a shadowy corporate fixer who remembers their previous encounters with the party. Their actions and strategies are shaped by that shared history, making them incredibly compelling and dynamic antagonists.
Absolutely. The ultimate advice in the article seems to be, trust your players. Let them surprise you. Let the story flex. Keep the story's spine intact, but be willing to weave 1,000 unexpected branches. The resulting narrative tapestry becomes richer, stranger, and more human than any rigid script could ever produce. It's about embracing that truly collaborative, evolving nature of tabletop storytelling.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's the heart of it.
We've talked a lot about the theory and the techniques behind reactive heists. Now let's try to bring it all to life with some vivid examples of these kinds of heists in action. The article provides some really impactful scenarios that illustrate all these principles working together.
Yeah, it does. It starts with what it calls the thieves' ball scenario. Picture this. A simple snag the jewel job at some fancy high society masquerade ball.
Okay, classic setup.
Classic setup. The party's rogue makes a clever move, successfully bribes a guard, thinking they've secured silent passage into a restricted area. Easy peasy.
Seems straightforward enough.
But that guard, maybe being opportunistic, or perhaps just genuinely scared of getting caught, immediately tips off the rival crew that the players have been feuding with.
No, okay.
So the players, thinking they're home free and sneaking into the Countess's private study, instead walk straight into an ambush orchestrated by their rivals right there at the ball itself. Suddenly, all hell breaks loose, masks fall, spells fly. The city's criminal grapevine is instantly buzzing about the disruption at this high-profile event.
Wow. Okay, so what happens next? How does that ripple out?
Well, word of the chaos explodes through taverns, alliances buckle as factions scramble to figure out who shot first, and the once-staid nobles panic, fearing for their own valuables or maybe getting implicated in the underworld conflict. This forces the players, who are now probably fighting for their lives or trying to escape, to devise makeshift plans under entirely new rules and threats. Their initial, seemingly successful action, that simple bribe, completely reshaped the entire mission and potentially the rest of the night. They thought they had a quiet infiltration, but they've walked into a chaotic three-way standoff between themselves, the rival crew, and a ballroom full of panicked, possibly armed nobles. It's a fantastic escalation that feels entirely earned because it stemmed from that single guard's reaction.
That's brilliant. Another great one is bluffing a noble. A player, maybe the party face, bluffs their way into a different masquerade, another staple heist move, but in the process, they inadvertently insult a masked prince without realizing who he is.
Uh-oh. Social faux pas.
Big time. And this isn't just about a failed social check or an awkward moment. It's about a social blunder with immediate and escalating consequences.
Precisely. The fallout, then, ripples into new night patrols, specifically looking for the rude guest fitting this description, citywide suspicion of anyone acting unusual or asking too many questions, and potentially even a mid-heist duel that the insulted prince's loyal guards arrange later to restore his wounded honor. A single poorly chosen word or social misstep suddenly has very tangible physical consequences that affect the whole city's security posture and might force the players into unexpected combat or a desperate flight just to avoid capture or a public shaming. It's a perfect example of a purely social action having significant physical ramifications throughout the world.
And what about when a party tries to be really clever and plants false clues to throw off pursuit? The article says that sometimes clever investigators cross-check details, notice inconsistencies, and follow the trail of the false clues straight back to the player's next planned safe house or meeting spot. So their own cleverness boomerangs on them in a truly satisfying, logical way.
Yes, this is a great one for showing that the world isn't dumb. It learns and analyzes. The investigators aren't fooled for long. They connect the dots the players didn't intend, find the inconsistencies and the planted evidence, and use those logical gaps to narrow down possibilities and maybe even predict the player's next move.
Right.
And then the consequence is that the crew has to burn the next few jobs operating in a haze and paranoia because guards don't simply forget the world remains ever watchable. This means they probably can't use their usual contact who might be under surveillance now. They might have to lay low for a while, losing valuable time. Or they have to operate with extreme caution, constantly looking over their shoulder, maybe taking elaborate countermeasures. It's a fantastic long-term consequence stemming directly from a clever but ultimately flawed player plan.
It really emphasizes that point, that a single shout on a rooftop draws a city's worth of night watchers. Every little action, whether intentional or accidental, can have enormous unforeseen consequences, whether it's a failed stealth roll triggering an alarm, a desperate plea overheard by the wrong person, or a sudden, loud, magical burst that attracts unwanted attention. The world is always listening, always watching.
And if there's a major betrayal, like a trusted fences betrayal, the article suggests it can send players crawling through sewer pipes and grimy tavern corners, desperately reestablishing alliances, shifting tactics, and always searching for a new edge. This isn't just a minor plot twist. It forces the players to fundamentally change their entire approach to the heist, and maybe even their life in the city. They have to rely on new, untested resources, navigate a world where they know they've been compromised, and adapt to a completely new, more hostile reality. It transforms the entire flow and feel of the game, making the world feel dangerous and dynamic.
The reactive heist example table in the source provides even more specific breakdowns. For instance, going back to bribing a vault guard. The player decision is simple. The guard accepts bribe, but the immediate narrative reaction could be that the rival crew is notified, like in the ball example, and the long-term campaign impact might be that guards in that facility are replaced with more loyal ones, making future bribery much riskier. What's the impact of that kind of long-term shift on a party that maybe relies heavily on bribery as a tactic?
Oh, that's a devastating long-term consequence for a party that uses bribery as their primary tactic. They now face guards who are either genuinely incorruptible, perhaps magically compelled, or just much, much more expensive and dangerous to even attempt to sway. This forces them to fundamentally reevaluate their entire strategy for future heists in that location, or maybe even against that entire faction.
Yeah, they have to adapt.
They have to adapt. They can't just throw money at problems anymore. They might have to actually learn new skills, stealth, social engineering, maybe even combat. They might need to find entirely new types of contacts or informants. Or perhaps they have to embrace more direct, riskier methods. It pushes them out of their established comfort zone and forces player growth and tactical evolution within the campaign. It's an excellent way to keep things fresh.
Or, take this one, stealing a magical artifact, tripping a ward. Let's say a player fails to dispel the ward properly. The immediate reaction isn't just a loud noise. Maybe the wards silently notify arcane investigators. And the long-term impact could be that magical surveillance now stalks the party. This introduces a whole new type of antagonist and threat to the game, one that might not even be physical.
Exactly. Instead of just dealing with mundane guards and traps, now they're potentially dealing with highly skilled magical experts who can track them through scrying spells, divination magic, lingering magical auras, or sophisticated magical alarms placed throughout the city. This completely changes the nature of their challenges. Future obstacles shift from purely physical security measures, like locks and walls, to include magical countermeasures and detection grids.
So they need new solutions.
Right. The players suddenly have to worry about things like magical auras clinging to them, the need for non-detection spells, dispelling surveillance magic cast on themselves, and maybe actively avoiding specific magical hot zones in the city where detection is stronger. It adds an entirely new dimension to their heists and forces them to think much more creatively about magical evasion and countermeasures, not just traditional physical stealth.
The best reactive moments truly create new webs from simple decisions. What starts as a single thread transforms into a tapestry of risk, surprise, and triumph. It's all about building this complex, interconnected narrative that feels uniquely generated by the specific choices and actions of your table.
That's the beauty of it.
So, we've talked about the magic and the potential of reactive heists, but let's be honest, what are the common pitfalls? Where can this incredibly dynamic approach go wrong for dungeon masters trying to implement it?
That's a really important question. The primary pitfall, as the article aptly puts it, is the shadow of overcomplexity. It looms large. The natural urge to try and prepare for every possible branch of player choice can overwhelm even seasoned DMs.
Though I can absolutely see that happening. Analysis paralysis.
Exactly. It leads to throttling momentum and drowning vital moments in endless notes. When you're trying to juggle the potential reactions of a dozen different NPCs alongside the shifting agendas of 3 different factions and track half a dozen simultaneous player actions and their immediate consequences, it can quickly become completely unmanageable and just not fun anymore.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. And when the world becomes too wild and unchecked, the article says, narrative confusion seeps in and players lose their sense of agency. The pacing suffers terribly, and with it, the thrill kind of evaporates. It's hard to feel like your choices are impactful if you can't even understand what your impact was amidst all the swirling chaos. I remember playing in a game once where the DM was trying so hard to make everything reactive, but the consequences felt so random and disconnected that it just became a confusing mess. We eventually stopped trying to plan carefully because nothing seemed to logically follow from our actions anyway.
That's a perfect illustration of the second major peril the article warns about: the poison of confusion and inconsistency. If the consequences you present seem arbitrary or the logical connections warp unexpectedly, the campaign just slides into chaos. Players want surprise, yes, but not senseless, random upheaval.
Right, believable surprise.
Believable surprise. And inconsistency tanks believability faster than almost anything else. If NPCs suddenly forget previous betrayals that should have mattered, or if guards routinely ignore alarms that should have triggered a massive response, players recognize the hollowness underneath the facade. The immersion breaks completely. They start seeing the seams of the game, the mechanics, rather than feeling the reality of the world.
The article lists several key mistakes to avoid that generally fall into these categories. One that really jumped out at me was neglecting to show consequences in-game. You can have the most detailed spreadsheet in the world tracking every ripple, but if the players don't actually experience those consequences at the table, they might as well not exist.
That's such a critical point. A consequence unseen is a consequence wasted, narratively speaking. If the city guard is now on high alert because of something the players did, the players need to see tangible evidence of that. Visibly more patrols on the streets, stricter checks at the city gates, maybe new wanted posters going up with surprisingly accurate descriptions of them, or perhaps a usually reliable local informant is conspicuously absent or too scared to talk. It's not enough for the DM to just know it happened. The players need visible, palpable evidence of the world reacting to their actions. It makes the world feel alive and their choices feel genuinely meaningful.
And the flip side of that is ignoring player ingenuity to steer toward planned outcomes. I mean, that's basically the textbook definition of railroading, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
This completely undermines the whole point of running a reactive game and essentially tells players their brilliant, unexpected ideas don't actually matter in the end.
Absolutely. If a player comes up with an incredibly clever, totally unexpected solution to a problem, something you hadn't planned for at all, and the DM subtly, or maybe not so subtly, nudges or forces them back onto a pre-planned track, well, it's just demoralizing. It teaches players that their creativity isn't actually welcome or rewarded. Instead, the advice is to embrace that ingenuity. Let their cleverness open up entirely new, unforeseen narrative branches, even if it means you have to improvise a bit more heavily in the moment. That's where the real magic of the collaborative story truly shines. Lean into the surprise.
So the solutions to these pitfalls, according to the article, begin and end with discipline. It's not about less prep necessarily, but smarter prep. DMs should develop lean, adaptive planning habits.
Indeed. It advises DMs to prioritize tracking the most important ripple points, those actions with the biggest potential impact, to regularly recap shifting dynamics with players so everyone stays on the same page about the state of the world, and to keep your consequence map up to date but streamlined. These are proactive steps to manage complexity without getting lost.
Right.
And if the campaign starts to wobble, if things feel confusing or bogged down, don't be afraid to pull back, clarify cause and effect, perhaps through an NPC interaction or just an out-of-character chat, and maybe use one of those anchor point events to realign the city and its players, reminding everyone of the core stakes. It's about not being afraid to course correct if you find yourself getting overwhelmed, or if the players seem lost.
Brevity and clarity, spiked with logic, empower the most thrilling sessions. I like that. And ultimately, preparation and player-focused planning stave off disaster. It's about being prepared for flexibility, being ready to adapt, not necessarily predicting or prepping for every single specific outcome. That's a great distillation. It's not about perfect prediction, but intelligent, flexible design that genuinely invites collaborative storytelling.
Exactly. That's the tightrope walk.
So as we wrap things up here, it's abundantly clear that these reactive D&D heist campaigns, when done well, offer a unique, exhilarating tension. It's definitely no static puzzle, no rote sequence of locks and keys.
Not at all.
Every plan the players make, every moment of panic, every clever pivot mid-heist shapes a living city, a breathing cast of characters, a legend that's in constant flux. This isn't just running through a pre-written game. It feels more like co-creating a drama unfolding in real time.
It truly is a different beast entirely. And mastering reactivity, or at least aiming for it, means consciously letting go of certainty. It's about trusting your preparation, trusting your methods and tools, and maybe most crucially, trusting your players to surprise you in wonderful ways. The very best moments often emerge not from the script you wrote, but from the sparks and collisions of ambition and fear happening right there at the table. It's letting the story breathe and evolve organically, almost as if it has its own will sometimes.
And you absolutely need to let the world push back, to grow paranoid, to blink when the unexpected strikes. In this delicate symmetry of player agency and logical consequence, the suspense holds fast. It's about letting the world be a character in the story, not just a passive stage for your players to perform on. It challenges them, it remembers their deeds, good and bad, and it adapts to their very presence within it.
When you truly embrace dynamic reactivity, you don't just tell a tale, you build a world with your table. Every session a new legend, every memory a mark left on the city's dark, gleaming heart. It's a profoundly collaborative storytelling experience that creates those unforgettable moments and personal sagas that resonate long, long after the dice are put away. It really fosters that sense of genuine discovery and meaningful consequence that makes tabletop RPGs so incredibly special.
Couldn't agree more. A huge thank you to LitRPG Reads, and especially to Anna Labansky for the fantastic insights in her article that really fueled this deep dive today. She truly laid out a fantastic roadmap for DMs looking to explore this style.
For here, great article.
And of course, a special shout out to Paul Bello, A fine fellow indeed, as the source notes for all his ongoing work and contributions in the LitRPG space. We truly hope this deep dive has sparked some exciting ideas for your next D&D heist.
We'd absolutely love to hear from you listening. What are some of your favorite reactive heist moments from your own games, either as a player or a DM? Do you have any go-to storytelling tips or tracking methods for DMs looking to make their campaigns more responsive and dynamic?
Yeah, definitely share your thoughts and stories in the comments. We'd love to read them. Until next time, keep those dice rolling, keep those plans flexible, and keep those worlds reacting.